Hello, I'm Dan, and you're watching Dan Explains. So what do I mean by code? I don't mean it by the context of encryption. I'm talking about the code that God uses to compress information. But why would God need to compress anything, right? He's infinite. If you had a hard drive with infinite space, you'd never need to zip files, or have to worry about losing quality with the photos you store on your hard drive. So why does God need it? Well, he doesn't. But why does he use it? And what is the code he's using? Is he using it to bury secrets in plain sight? Let me explain. So, before I go too far into it, I'd like to explain what compression is and how it works. I'm just going to give a simple explanation of basically how it works, because it's a whole industry in itself. Besides, I don't understand it well enough to give any more than just a quick look anyway. So this is by no means the only way compression works, but I think it will help with the understanding of what I'm about to talk about. Okay, so a way you can compress something down, like a text file, one of the simplest methods is what's called dictionary-based encoding. If you imagine you have a document, many of the words in that document are repeated, like the word "the," for instance. Assuming each letter takes up a byte, that would be 3 bytes. Now, in the dictionary encoding, what you could do is replace the word "the" with a simple byte that the compression program knows represents the word "the" by looking at a reference table. The reference table is oftentimes stored with the file for future reference. But for files like text files, where the likely phrases and how often they appear are likely to be known, a static reference table in the decompression program itself can be used. This, of course, doesn't have to be whole words. It could just be parts of words or even whole phrases. So, why would God use compression? Well, the answer is pretty simple. To pass on as much information to us as he can in as little space as possible. Think about this. The Bible is a pretty thick book, but you can carry it around. An average adult can read 225 words in a minute. Wait, what? 225 words in a minute? Everyone in the book must sound like Mickey Mouse or something at that speed. It'd be like watching YouTube on 2x speed. Anyway, the Bible is a bit over 600,000 words, so an average adult can get through it in about a week if they read it for about 6 hours a day. Yeah, that does sound like a lot, but it's similar in length to The Lord of the Rings, which I'm sure many binge readers have put down in a week and still had time for other things to get done. And the information extracted from unpacking the Bible, to use compression jargon, can fill many libraries. So, how is it compressed? And how do we figure out how to decompress it? Well, the main way it's compressed is through context. You know, the idea that how you see something is altered by where you're coming from. So it's like we have a compressed document, except everything after compression is plain text we can read. If a Jew read some Christian perspectives on the Old Testament, I'm sure they would dismiss it all because the Christian writer didn't understand the original context of the passage. That's the thing. How we decode the compressed info in the Bible is by changing the context of the passage. If you read, especially the Old Testament, and just take everything at face value, many of the events don't seem to do anything at all or have any meaning. It's just like, well, okay, that happened, and move on to the next passage. However, with the insights of the different contexts, it's transformed. Consider the priest king Melchizedek, who was the king of Salem in Genesis 14. Salem, by the way, was the area now known as Jerusalem. You know, Jeru-Salem. Abram, before he was given the name Abraham by God, says Melchizedek offers sacrifice of bread and wine. Now, in its original context, it was used to legitimize tithing to the temple. However, later, after Christ's death and resurrection, Christians saw this as God in the Old Testament pointing to Christ as being the Messiah, among other things. I mean, what is Jesus? He's a priest king, ruling from the New Jerusalem. What did he do at the Last Supper? Offer bread and wine as his body and blood. Melchizedek is what's called a type of Jesus. In theological jargon, and the discovery of the events or persons in the Bible that are types of other things is what's called typology. Usually there are archetypes, like Jesus obviously would be an archetype. This can sometimes apply beyond the Bible as well. For instance, people in the past have been called the Antichrist, like Nero of the early Christian world, who was probably the person the author of the book of Revelation was thinking about when he wrote it. However, Nero isn't the archetype. The Antichrist will be. I mean, I hope will be, since hopefully he hasn't been born yet. The book of Revelation talks about the persecution of the early Christians. Any early Christian would be able to see that. It also refers to the final persecution as well, as we're now far removed from the early Christian persecutions, so we usually see it in that context. The same goes for some of Daniel's prophecies, for instance, about the abomination of desolation and the man of perdition. In Daniel's day, the person he was predicting was the Greek king who started to sacrifice to pagan gods in the Jewish temple. That story is told in the book of 1 Maccabees, but you need to find a Catholic or Orthodox Bible to read it, specifically 1 Maccabees 54 to 61. Jesus later points out in Matthew 24, 15 to 16, and also Mark 14, 14 to 15, that Daniel's prophecy also points to future persons. Today we think of that person as the Antichrist, but the early Christians would have thought Nero was the guy. So, one chapter in the Bible actually describes 3 events, at least. The point is that all 3 interpretations of Daniel's prophecy are correct. The extra meaning is unpacked by understanding the chapter from a different context. It's similar to the compression algorithm I mentioned earlier, but it has a static lookup table that we're only given one key value for when the passage was originally written. To extract the extra information, we need to wait for other things to provide a different context. Sometimes that's an event. Other times it's a theologian that brings a different understanding by making connections others hadn't noticed yet. So, this brings us back around to the beginning. Why does God hide so much in the Bible and not just make it all immediately obvious? Well, like I pointed out, space reasons. But it's more than that. God wants us to try and understand Him better, and He wants us to want to understand Him better. He wants us to love Him. Anyone who has ever fallen in love knows that the discovery process, when you're learning new things about each other all the time, is a big part of falling in love. After thousands of years, we're still going through that discovery process with God. And He made sure there will always be something new to discover, so we can grow closer to Him no matter how close we are now. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please press the like button. Subscribe to my channel and ding the bell to get notified when I post new videos. Also, please support me on Patreon, link in the description. The more people support me, the more time I can dedicate to making videos like this one. So, until next time, have a great week.